Welcome everyone to the Women and Relationships webinar, educational webinar for adults with spina bifida, planned and executed by adults with spina bifida. We're glad you're here tonight. This session will be recorded, as you may have just heard, and you will have access to the recording tomorrow, Juanita?
Yes.
Soon. Yep,
yes.
tomorrow.
Yes.
So I'd like for the participants to introduce themselves, and finally, Juanita Penlander will let you know about the logistics of the call. So Leslie, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Leslie Myers. I'm with the Vera Institute of Justice. I work in the Center on Victimization and Safety, and we're a New York-based company, though I work remotely from Illinois. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Leslie. Samantha.
Hi, I'm Samantha Perez. I'm from Tyler, Texas, and I'm a part of the SBA Adult Advisory Council, and I am an adult with spina bifida.
Thanks, Sam. Elizabeth.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Scriven. I'm also adult with spina bifida in the Seattle area. I'm a mental health therapist, and I'm excited to be here tonight.
Thank you. And Amy.
I am Amy Richards. I live in Methuen, Massachusetts. I am also an adult with spina bifida. I'm also on the Spina Bifida Association Adult Advisory Council, and I'm a board member with the Spina Bifida Association of Greater New England.
And now Juanita will get us started.
Thank you, everybody. And you probably know after a year plus of Zoom things, but please send us your questions. So after the presenters are done, we'll have an opportunity to submit your own questions, and even throughout. I've noticed that you're already chatting, so you can do it through chat or Q&A, and we'll just sort of monitor to make sure that we cover everything that you want to know. And now we'll turn it over to Samantha.
Thank you. So I'm going to be covering, talking about my relationships, platonic and romantic. First, I'm going to talk about long distance relationships and communication problem solving and conflict resolution from, whether that's, if you have a friend online that you're communicating with that's living far away, or in a relationship romantically with your partner, and maybe you're separated by the pandemic right now. What I've found, and there's also a picture of me and my friends, and we live in separate cities, and we communicate pretty much by phone. We use different kinds of communication apps, Snapchat, Facebook, things like that. But when talking about problem solving and conflict resolution, we kind of have an unspoken rule that, any problems that we have, we talk about it over, face to face, like this, through video chat and things like that. And I'm going to be referring to some notes here, so if I'm not looking directly at the screen, that's what I'm doing. So things that you should remember whenever you're problem solving and whatnot is listening to everyone's opinion. Everybody's feelings are important, and just kind of keeping that in mind. The next thing I'm going to cover is how to meet someone safely online and putting that into practice. So lots of dating apps and lots of different apps that I've seen pop up just kind of on ads through Facebook and everything. Tinder, I believe, has a feature where you can, if you're in a situation that you're uncomfortable with, you can click it and, maybe it'll alert authorities or something like that. Or, always, letting a friend know where you are and where, sending the address, and also not going alone to things, and meeting people in a public place is very, very important in my experiences. Next thing is space to grow with each other and respect each other's individualism. It's very important, I found in my relationships, that, you know, you're not always going to like what your friends like, and that's totally okay, but you shouldn't be putting each other down for that. I have a friend of mine whose business is solely based around building escape rooms and stuff like that. So they like to talk about that all the time and share that with their friends. And, you know, I don't know much about that, but that's okay. You know, that's their thing and I'm happy for them. And so I'm going to do what I can to express that and show that for them. And Juanita, is there any more on this slide?
No, I don't think there is. But if there's anything else that you wanted to share, please go ahead.
No, I think that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Samantha.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to move on to Amy.
There we are. Okay, so I have a couple of slides. So this will be the first of two. And now Samantha gave us some really great information on kind of how to start some relationships. So I think this is a great segue. So what I want to talk about today is how you know you're in a healthy relationship. And there are going to be some points that I'll make that will definitely be expanded upon later. And I have notes as well, so I will be looking at those. I think the most basic determinant for a healthy relationship is having your needs met. And that goes for everyone involved in the relationship. These needs can be physical, they can be emotional, physical, you know, touching, kissing, hugging, etc. Emotional needs can involve, you know, trust, care, mutual respect, etc. Having a disability, obviously these basic needs still exist, but there might be additional needs, and there's many layers to them, of course, with our physical needs, especially, but also emotional. You know, there can be many layers to anyone's emotional needs, but I think in the disability community, there's a lot more layers, in my opinion. Basically, I want to talk a little bit about a term that I recently learned. I probably should have put that in quotations because it's not a term that I came up with. It's called access intimacy. And basically what I've come to understand is that this term describes, it can be a platonic relationship, it can be a romantic relationship, but it's one that where your access or accessibility, your needs are understood and they don't need to be spoken. So for example, this photo here, any excuse to use my wedding picture. I got married 3 years ago. And these women here are my best friends. We've known each other since middle school. And we are all in our 30s now. And we have our own families and we live in different states. And we have a group text going, we stay in touch all the time. And they know basically all of the details of my disability. We are that close. And I don't need to worry about things when I'm with them, such as, this is a very basic example. Let's say we're walking somewhere. They know that, without being told or asked, they will match my pace. They won't walk ahead of me. They don't make me feel like I need to rush to keep up with them. And this is just something that's mutually understood because we have spent so much time together. And so if that's an example of intimacy in that we are so close, we're so interconnected that we don't need to speak this, it's just known. And again, in my experience and in my opinion, relationships that reach this point or that can reach this point are really fulfilling. And then when a relationship is healthy and fulfilling, not only are your needs met, but they're valued and they're respected. So this looks like friends or romantic partners acknowledging and validating your feelings, or your physical struggles or your successes. So, for example, my friends here, they all know that I see a therapist. So they will ask me how I'm feeling. They'll ask me how it's going. They know that it means a lot to me to check in and see how I'm doing. Physically, if I'm in physical pain, they will reach out and, my husband, for example, will make sure that I'm taking care of myself, and he notices. There's that intimacy where you just don't need to, again, speak your needs. And so when you're in a healthy relationship, friends or a partner will help. They will ask questions. They will make an effort to avoid situations that kind of emphasize your differences. Friendships and romantic relationships that are healthy are not. And if we could go to the next slide, actually. So these relationships are not conditional. So this means that they don't exist only given a certain set of circumstances. They won't be under threat of ending or being taken away if those circumstances change, or if they're, suddenly not acceptable to the other person. Those would be very unhealthy things that would happen. And I'll discuss that later when I talk about unhealthy relationships. But you can have a healthy relationship with someone even if they don't know every detail, like I mentioned with my friends. But there should be space for each person to be open, to be openly themselves, and share the parts of themselves that they want to share, or that you want to share. One thing personally that I am still learning is that there should be, or there is room in a healthy relationship for each person in times of agreement and disagreement. So in a healthy relationship, conflict, it can exist in a healthy way, as long as it comes with strong communication skills. And those can be really difficult to practice. But, with respect and empathy and communication, these, conflict can be absolutely healthy and fine in a relationship. There's a misconception that, good relationships are ones where you never fight with your partner. But a lot of people might disagree with that and just say that there should be, or that there is room for disagreement, as long as there's that mutual respect for your opinions, your beliefs, your values, your personality. And that kind of touches on what Sarah mentioned. You may not have the same interests. You might not believe the same things as a friend or a partner, but it doesn't mean that that relationship still can't be very close and intimate. And I think that touches on it all. So Elizabeth will be talking next.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Yeah, thank you, Samantha and Amy, for your personal insights into relationships. I'm going to talk for a couple slides about the building blocks of a relationship and what those are. It's hard to have a relationship if you don't know what the ingredients are. So like the first pieces are really about knowing yourself and knowing what's important to you, and knowing which values that you have and which ones you need to stick to, and which ones there's some flexibility. So some ways that you can kind of figure out what you like about yourself, what you don't like about yourself, what your values are, is you could talk to others. Find out from others what they think your values are. You can read, get online and read about different personality styles or the different topics that you might be interested in. There's a values card sort activity that you can Google and find online. Therapy or talking to another trusted person, a pastor or a teacher or a good friend can help you kind of explore some of those things as well. As you're kind of figuring that out, again, don't compromise on what is important to you. You heard Amy talk about that. Samantha too. We all have areas that we can compromise and be flexible in. And then there's other areas that are just musts. You know, we faith tends to be one of those places. Sometimes the kinds of things we might want to advocate for, whether it's something like spina bifida and disability rights or some other kind of human rights type of a movement, that we're not going to be flexible and compromise on. For me, maybe it's a certain kind of food, right? Like, I'm not going to compromise on my pumpkin pie ice cream. Like, that's mine. You can't have it. So there's different areas of compromise in places that we don't want to. As you get to know yourself, as you get to learn what you like and what you don't like, finding ways to get comfortable with yourself and your disability. So there's things about life that we can change and we can have some control over. I can choose to wear makeup. I can choose what clothes to wear. I can choose what kind of food to put into my body and how much to exercise. I can't choose. I have no control over whether or not I'm going to use my wheelchair today, because if I'm going to go anywhere, I will be using my wheelchair. I can't control my bowel or my bladder very well sometimes, and that's just kind of a thing. So getting kind of comfortable with what I can and can't do, where my realms of control are about myself and my values and the way I carry myself, and the things I just have to accept and being okay with that. One of the ways to do that is finding ways and activities to build your self-esteem and confidence. So Samantha had a picture of her, it looked like at some sort of a sporting event with other people in wheelchairs. So sports are a great way to build some confidence. Games and puzzles. Other hobby-like activities are a great way to build some self-esteem and confidence. Being kind to others and giving back can be a great way to build some self-esteem and confidence. There's nothing like being of service to someone else to make both of you guys feel good. Next slide, please. Another important piece that's really spina bifida related is being comfortable with talking about your spina bifida and how it weaves in and out of your life. So this might be about how it affects your physical body. Like, do you have muscle spasms? Do you have pain? Can you walk? Or do you use a wheelchair or other mobility device? Bowel and bladder issues as appropriate in a relationship, right? Like, those are intimate enough issues. You may not want to talk about those with everybody. And that's okay. Being ready to talk about how it affects the places you might go. I live near Seattle, and I have learned that before I go to a comedy club or certain restaurants, I need to call ahead and make sure they're accessible. Some of the buildings in downtown Seattle are historic and they haven't been modified to meet ADA code. So being prepared to talk to my friends about that, so that we can plan activities that we can all participate in equally. If you have social learning difficulties, some of the executive function difficulties that come with hydrocephalus, be aware of those and how those might affect you, and how you might sometimes need some social cueing to help you stay on topic, or some help problem solving or strategizing or planning. It's okay to ask for help. I'm a big believer in our need for human connection, and asking for help and being able to give help is one really great way to connect and make relationship with other people. Another piece is being ready for questions. I don't know about the other folks on this panel, but I, as someone with spina bifida who uses a wheelchair, I get tons of questions, and I don't have to answer them all. I get to pick and choose which questions I answer, when I answer them, and when I choose to ignore them or say that's none of your business, but being ready to have some answers for those. Both Samantha and Amy talked about shared interests and common values. And I very much agree with them. Relationship is about having some common interests and some ground that you can have in common and share and enjoy together, as well as having some differences and learning from each other about the different hobbies or activities or values that one person might have and the other might not. Next slide, please. I think you went one too far. There we go. Another really important thing, especially in more romantic relationships, is expectations. So, you know, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We think a little differently. And being clear about our expectations for a relationship. Being clear about when you're comfortable having sex or when you're not comfortable having sex. Being clear about when you're comfortable being out in public after meeting online versus being at home by yourselves when you've met online. Being clear that you're looking for a friendship and not a romantic relationship or vice versa. Those are all really important to have out in the open and to be discussing. When you're looking for a healthy relationship, you're looking for a relationship that makes you feel safe, that makes you feel calm, that makes you feel happy. You're looking for someone else in your life that brings you joy. I think that is the real gift of relationship, is that sense of joy and connectedness that you can get. And this idea of a soulmate that so many of us kind of aspire to, thanks to Disney and other little princess movies that we watched growing up, isn't the be all end all. And some people may not even think it's a thing. I'm not going to dispute soulmate being a thing or not being a thing tonight, but just know it's not the be all end all, and you have to start at the basics. You're not going to find a soulmate if you don't start at the level of a friendship. And I agree with Amy. Amy was spot on. Like, a healthy relationship is not defined by conflict and drama, but we'll certainly have some conflict and we'll certainly have some drama. And the marker of a healthy relationship is, how do you talk about that? How do you agree to disagree at times or come to some sort of a common solution? The big takeaway I want you guys to kind of walk away with as I wrap up my section is just know that when you're content with yourself, when you're comfortable in your own skin, when you know what your ideas are and you can convey them to others, that kind of confidence really projects out. And healthy people tend to be attracted to people who know who they are and feel sure about who they are. And so that's the biggest tip I have, is being comfortable in your own skin. Because when you are comfortable in your own skin, you will attract other people who are also comfortable in their own skin. And those are the types of people that really healthy relationships can be formed with. I think that's the end of my section. I think we're going back to Amy.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I love that you ended where you did. It just reminded me of something that my husband said when we first met. So we had known each other when we were younger, and we re-met while I was in college. And one of the first things what he said to me was, his first impression was that I kind of just like knew who I was. And honestly, I didn't feel that way at the time necessarily, but I think I came into a situation where we had met each other and I was feeling really safe and really happy because we were with friends. And I guess I was just being myself. But it was just like it was a really nice way to kind of realize that was the impression I had put out there, whether it was intentional or not. But and some really great points that you'd made in there, Elizabeth, I hope to touch on in here as well. So I'm going to talk about unhealthy relationships and how you know when you are either in one or you had been in one, maybe a friend is in one. So an unhealthy relationship, it might involve a person in the relationship who doesn't validate or respect the needs of the other. So the flip side of what I had spoken about earlier. This might look like someone who may embarrass the other person, maybe speaking down to them, ignoring boundaries, or making the other person feel less than or unsafe. It can also look like a person threatening to leave the relationship if they don't get something that they want, or when conflict occurs. If you feel afraid or nervous to tell someone something, or to question them in some way, or to do something that might upset them, these are all unhealthy, are all markers of an unhealthy relationship. if you feel personally responsible for another person's emotions, or maybe that may be an unhealthy relationship, and of course any fear or the presence of any physical or emotional harm is never okay. And this could also include the pressure to behave in a certain way that you're uncomfortable with. And I guess I wanted to bring another personal example into this. And something that Elizabeth said that really resonated with me was that a relationship is not the end all be all. So my very first relationship, romantic relationship, was when I was in high school. And I distinctly remember that at the time I was seeing a counselor, and I told her, I met a boy, I'm so happy, I don't need therapy anymore. Literally said that to her. And it was very much not true. I initially was not even sure if this person was someone that I wanted to be around at the very beginning. He was a troublemaker, he was a rule breaker, very much the opposite of me. But he gave me attention, and it was a type of attention I never received before. He told me I was beautiful. He made he made the first moves. He seemed genuinely accepting of my disability, which was gigantic because it was a huge, huge part of my sense of my lack of self-confidence. My friends did not like him. That was a gigantic red flag. And these are the same friends that were in my picture before. So they knew me really, really well, and they were not okay with this relationship. And I remember one of my best friends asking, what do you see in this person? And the first thing out of my mouth was, he likes me. And I didn't see that at the time as a red flag, but it, again, very much a red flag. He, throughout the whole relationship, made it really clear that the relationship would end if I didn't do certain things with him. Because if I really loved him or really liked him, that I would want to. As a result, I was unfortunately pressured to do things. And when I did eventually realize that what he was doing and saying to me was not okay, I was able to leave the relationship. But unfortunately, it did take me a long time to get to that point. The words that he left me with were that nobody will love you the way that I have. Nobody will accept you the way you are. And hearing that at 17, that left really deep wounds. But I've gotten to a point where I can kind of forgive myself because I was a kid at the time too. He was, but I was too. And I did not know any better. And it's important to note that it's never your fault, whether you're a kid or an adult. It is never your fault when you're treated poorly. You do deserve, everyone deserves and is capable of love and care. And it's like Elizabeth said too, it's okay to ask for help, especially when you're trying to get out of an unhealthy relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship. It's absolutely okay to ask for help, and it's really important to do so if you need it. And I think that is Samantha's cue.
Oh, here I am. Okay. That was awesome. Thank you, Amy. So I'm just going to kind of expand a little bit further and give my personal example. No one should ever use your limits or your personal boundaries to control you or influence you. And no one should make you feel bad for having boundaries or limits. I had an experience, and whenever I say limits or boundaries, I mean financial, physical, intellectual, anything to that degree. I had an experience in my first semester of college. It was a platonic relationship. It was me and a girl that were really good friends, and I thought she was so cool and was very adventurous. And we started going to Houston every weekend to go to Renaissance festivals. And I found myself paying for dinner because her excuse was always, well, I'm paying for gas, so you should pay for everything else. And that's not okay. And finally, whenever I, because I'm the kind of person that will give and give and give until I don't have anything to give anymore. And whenever I'd gotten to that point where I was like, I can't pay for sushi dinners anymore, and I can't do this, all the time. I just, I have more important things to pay for. I'm in college. I need to eat too. And she got very upset with me, and other people were actually telling me, kind of similar to Amy's situation, telling me, why are you friends with this person? They just kind of treat you like a piggy bank. And that doesn't seem okay. And for my physical issues, she was kind of, always wanting to push. I used my wheelchair to get around campus just because it's a big campus. And she was always wanting to push my wheelchair, but it was only around people. So it was only so she could so people could see her do this. And I didn't notice that because I was just happy to have somebody, let me rest my arms for a bit. But yeah, Amy hit a bunch of really big points that kind of, pretty much goes over everything that I was gonna go over, so I won't spend too much time on that. But yeah, just don't let anybody, use your personal limits or boundaries to kind of get notoriety for themselves or make themselves look good or make you feel bad or put them down, or put you down, excuse me. So yeah, I will pass it on to, I think Leslie's next.
Yes, thank you so much, Samantha and Amy. And yeah, we'll move on to Leslie.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your stories with us. I'm going to now talk a little bit about power and two different concepts of power. The first being the power to, which is the ability you and I have to change the circumstances of our lives by creating and exercising options, and also power over, which is the ability to limit the options of others. An example is I have the power, I live alone, I got 3 dogs. I have the power to make a decision to go to Miami on vacation. Power over would be like if I was 16, my parents would have power over me to say, no, you're not going to Miami on vacation. Or if I was an adult with a guardian who might say, no, you're not going to go to Miami on vacation. Or the other example of power over is if I had a partner who maybe didn't trust me to go by myself, or who didn't like the friends I kept and said, no, you can't go and to Miami on vacation. With the spring break going on, I wouldn't want to go to Miami on vacation anyway. So let's power to and power over. So let's go ahead to the next slide. So having one's power to, the power to make choices, overruled by another person, their power over us to make changes in what we have chosen to do, can really lead to an experience of feeling powerlessness, to be feeling like you've lost control of your own life. When the interest in power over, when somebody wants to control you, wants to have power over you, that can lead in an escalation of the power and control. And it also escalates into abusive behavior. Some of the things that Amy and Samantha were talking about with having control over you, saying, you know, I drove all the way, you can pay for everything else. And it's important to remember that power over and love are not compatible. They're not going to work together. So somebody doesn't need to have power over you to love you. In fact, they should want to share power with you. Go ahead. So I want to talk about some warning signs of abusive behavior that some of this has been mentioned by our examples from Amy and Samantha. But some warning signs is if your partner, if the person or a friend cuts you off, keeps you from contacting your mother, your father, your other friends. They might want to keep really close tabs on where you go and who you see. They might get really upset whenever your family or friends call the house. That's a warning sign. It's a way to get you isolated, keep you away from people that you're close to by isolating you. Another warning sign is if they keep you from eating, sleeping, or getting medical care. And this does happen. I've worked with a number of people who really, the stress gets to be so much with living with somebody who's being abusive that they use that, keeping you awake at night or coming in drunk to make you wake up when you're sleeping, keeping you from eating, or keeping you from going to the doctor or to the hospital to get treatment for any of the injuries that they may have inflicted. And if your partner physically or sexually harms you, that's another clear indication that it's a bad relationship. Okay, you can switch. If your partner controls all the money and makes you justify every penny that you spend, this is one of the ways when I work with women who are in domestic violence, this is one way that keeps women from being able to leave because they don't have access to any of the shared finances or even their own finances. People that are receiving government benefits, those are for them, but sometimes somebody will take control over the bank account and not allow them to have access. Whenever the person bullies or threatens you, and these threats can come in all sorts of ways. They may threaten you physically. They may threaten you, threaten a service dog. They may threaten a family member or a friend, or they may threaten to harm themselves. So these threats can be a wide variety of things. And bullying is bullying. We all know about bullying, and a lot of times that might be focused on the disability because one other warning sign is that they might be using your disability as a way to bully and degrade you. And finally, if your partner if you depend on your partner for certain things, let's say they help you get dressed in the morning, you don't have a personal care worker to come in until the afternoon, so they help you in the morning get dressed. They might use your dependence on them to actually punish you. That might be something as simple as grabbing the shirt to take off and then making it painful when they take it off by pulling your arms up real high. So those are some of the warning signs that the relationship is not going in a good direction. Now, there's also signs you can look out for others with your friends and even family members. There's some signs you can look out for those as well. So if you want to go to the next slide. So signs somebody else is being abused, you can keep your eyes out for some things like the individual making up excuses for injuries they may have. So, oh, I'm just clumsy and walked into a table for a bruise on their hip. Changes in the individual's personality is another sign. Someone who maybe was always really confident is now displaying really low self-esteem. The person may constantly check in with their partner and is not willing to make decisions on their own, even for something as simple as going out for a cup of coffee. Plus, the person may never have seem to have any money on hand. That could be another sign. Next one. The individual may also just seem really overly worried about pleasing their partner. They may skip things. They may not go to work, or they may not go to school. They may not go on social outings for no clear reason other than that their partner didn't want them to go. So they may decide not to go on to a company picnic because their partner didn't want to go. They may not want to go to some sporting events that they usually go to because their partner didn't want them to go. And another sign is wearing clothes that don't fit the season, something like wearing long sleeves in the summer, maybe because they're covering up the bruises from their partner. So those are some of the signs you can look for when you're interacting with your friends. You know, and I think the question is, who is these abusers? Who are they? So an abuser can be anyone. It could be a really nice guy or a really nice girl who's really friendly to everybody, but in private, they like to have control. They like to have power over the individual. Some people just want to have control over others. It's kind of that simple. They just have that kind of personality that they want to control other people. Some people may say that they grew up in families where they learned to treat others abusively. And some abusers might use alcohol, drugs, or financial difficulties as an excuse for their violent behavior. But I think one thing is really important to remember is that we can switch. There is no excuse for domestic abuse. So regardless of all these reasons I gave for potentially for the person becoming abusive, the truth of the matter is that they've made a decision. It's their decision. It's not the fault of the victim. It's always going to be the fault of the abuser. They can't say you drove them crazy, that you were demanding. All those excuses are just that, excuses, and they're not real. So if we want to go to the next slide, there are a couple of places, a couple of resources for you: the National Domestic Violence Hotline and the National Sexual Assault Hotline. If you know somebody, or if you yourself are in an abusive relationship and you want to connect, these are both national resources. Both numbers, when you call, actually connect you with your local program. So even though you call the national number, it's going to connect you with the program that's close to you. But I think the one thing to be aware of is that not all domestic violence and sexual assault programs are going to be accessible. So you'll need to make sure that you ask and use your self-advocacy skills to get whatever that you need for accommodations. All right.
Well, I want to thank our presenters for that really great information, and we do have a few questions. So I will, questions/statements. So I'll go ahead and review them now. And if you have any more, please send them while we're here. And one of the questions was, how do you navigate the dynamic? And this is, I guess, just for the presenters, just whoever wants to take it, or all of you, we'll figure it out. How do you navigate the dynamic transition from living with parents to living at home and asserting and keeping realistic boundaries, especially when parents still see and treat you as a child, even if you're an adult, and they still want a say in a lot of your life decisions and actions?
Can I take this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm actually in a similar situation right now. And I think the most important thing is be direct and be honest and assert that confidence. Show that you're taking initiative and becoming independent. Talk about the things that you're accomplishing with them. Show them that, you don't really, you don't necessarily need them anymore. You know, you want them around just in case, you know, you always want to be accepting of help if you need it. That's important. I've had to kind of be humbled here lately. But there are also lots of things that I've learned that I'm fully capable of doing, and it's such a good experience. But yeah, just be direct and be firm, and you know, if they're getting to the point where they're being kind of petty about things, you know, don't sink down to that level. You know, speak maturely, choose your words carefully. You know, if you start to feel yourself getting upset about things because you feel like you're not being heard, take a step back and say, I don't want to have this conversation right now because I'm getting upset and I don't think I can handle it maturely. Let's do this at another time. So that was it.
Thank you.
I want to normalize that transition. So spina bifida or not, some parents are better at letting their kids become adults than others. I used to work in children's mental health, and that was the biggest thing with some of my older teenagers was, how do I get to be my own adult version of me while my parents are still involved in my life? So it's a really normal transition. I very much agree with Samantha about setting some boundaries, but also we build trust with others by demonstrating our ability to take care of ourselves. So being confident in your abilities, asking for help when you do need help, and over time showing that you have the skills to take care of your finances, your bladder and bowel, your other kind of bigger things that parents tend to worry about. Because really in the end, most parents just want what's best for their kids because they love you and they worry about you. And it takes a moment for parents to realize that their kids are no longer kids.
Absolutely.
Anybody else want to jump in and share? Nope. Okay. All right. The next question. Oops. I've always had trouble dating because of self-esteem issues. I worry especially about having to reveal to a man that I have a bowel and bladder control issues. Sometimes I am rejected even when I just reveal the basics, like how I walk. Because of this, I've never had a boyfriend or ever been kissed or had sex. I use dating apps and we end up as friends in best case scenarios. Do you have any tips on overcoming self-esteem problems, fear of rejection due to disability?
I'll start out with this one. I can definitely, absolutely, personally relate to this. I think a lot of us can. I think a lot of it has to do with actually something that Elizabeth brought up earlier, I think really applies here, where she talked about how we can pick and choose which questions we answer. We don't have to provide information, even when people ask us directly. So I think it's really important to remember that your information, your abilities, your spina bifida, you are in control. You can decide how to tell people, who to tell, what information to tell and when. It's all within your control. That other person has zero control over that, and they should not feel like they have any control over that. It sometimes might just be a trial and error situation, where maybe you do tell someone something and it doesn't work out. So I guess relationship to relationship or person to person, it's going to vary. So just remembering that, like I said, you are in control. You can decide when to talk about it, what to talk about, and knowing that, sometimes it might not end the way that you want it to. And that is disappointing, and it hurts, and it's hard. And so it's not always that you have to overcome, that fear of rejection. I think everybody has that, and it's part of the experience, I guess, as much as it hurts, and it is disappointing, like I said. But it's so important to remember that we are all capable of love, and we all are deserving of love and friendship. And these conversations are really hard. They're really awkward. I've had them with a couple of, romantic partners, and these situations do happen with, you know, the bladder and bowel issues come up. They come up at really awkward times, really difficult times. It's embarrassing. It can really hurt, and it can be very uncomfortable. And when you are with a person who doesn't make you feel less, it doesn't make you feel, I don't know, I don't want to say gross, but like that's how I feel when things like that happen. Like I just feel yucky, you know, and the right person will lift you up. The right person will not that they don't care, they care for you. They care how you feel about it. They want you to feel okay and safe. And I just hope that this person experiences that.
Well said. I want to add the timing piece to this. So when I also do online dating. On my profile, I have at least one full body shot that shows me in my wheelchair. I'm appropriately dressed in that shot. And I always check in with the guy. Have you seen my profile pictures? So you know I use a wheelchair, right? And if the answer is no, then like that's on them. And then I pace what I tell them and when I tell them. I don't usually go to bowel and bladder, and I wouldn't until it was kind of at a point where we were really getting to know each other and hanging out outside in person, doing things, and maybe it was getting in the way. And I might start with something simple, like when I gotta go, because like I can kind of tell I gotta go, but I can't hold it. So if I tell you I need to use the bathroom, we need to stop what we're doing and I need to find a bathroom. And you introduce it in fits and starts. The other pieces for me is looking for flags. So if I'm doing online dating and within that first couple of text messages back and forth, they ask me if I can have sex, I that's my big red flag. Yes, people with disability can have sex, and no, that's not an appropriate question at this time. Because quite frankly, I don't want to just be someone's little sex toy. I want to be in a relationship. And then my last piece is counseling can be fabulous. And if you're finding your problems around self-esteem and fears of rejection are getting in the way of even beginning to form a relationship, go see a counselor, talk it out, figure out what you can do on a personal level. I can only give you general information tonight. I'm a therapist, and I still believe every good therapist has a therapist. And so like I'm in and out of therapy myself at times in my life, because we all need that support in a safe, HIPAA compliant, confidential way that we don't get with our friends and our parents.
Thank you very much. That was really good. And hold on a second, I'm just checking in. Someone just mentioned that they've been seeing therapists their whole life and still have terrible self-esteem. So do you have any other tips on that? Oh, Samantha, go ahead.
It's a process. It's a very long, hard process, but it's so worth it. I see a therapist and my self-esteem, isn't at its peak, but I'm getting there, and I hope you get there too. And it's just remember that it's a journey and it's okay. And it's not always straight up. It's very wavy and up and down all the time. And that's okay. What's important is that you kind of remind yourself, when you are having those negative thoughts, you just kind of have to let them, go in and out, and if you can. And sometimes that's really hard, but that's okay too. It's a journey. It's all good.
One of the best things that a therapist told me was to not believe myself all the time. That voice can be a liar, that voice in your head. They could be your worst critic, they could be your worst enemy, it can be a total liar. That's the anxiety talking to me. That's that little girl that got rejected, is still in there, that's believing these awful things that I'm saying about myself in my head. And it's a really hard thing to do, but it's really helpful to, when you have those negative thoughts, to stop and address it. Okay, what did I just say to myself? Why did I just say that? What's happening around me? what did someone else just say or do, you know, in my life that made me think that, to really like challenge yourself. And it feels silly, but I, you know, it's something that I've put into practice that's really helped, is just really just like kind of, it's like having a conversation with yourself in your head, really, or do it out loud even, you know, why did I just say that about myself? Is that really true? No, it's not. And I don't know, it sounds silly, but it helps me.
Well, and if you can't think of things to say to yourself, what would you say to your friend if they came to you saying those things about themselves? Sometimes it's easier to talk our friends out of those thoughts than it is to talk ourselves out of those thoughts.
So without noticing, I realized that we have a gajillion more questions. So let me just, a couple of them, and Leslie, you did an awesome job of pointing out some signs of abusive relationships, but and the presentation will be available afterwards. But what are some other like day-to-day things that you think could be like red flags for abusive relationships, for recognizing? And it says including but not limited to your partner's parents as well.
I mean, some of the things that is really a sign that things aren't, this isn't the best relationship for you, is if they're making you feel like you have to change, to that whatever's gone wrong is your fault. And there's a lot of, and with the self-esteem that we were just talking about, it's easy for people with disabilities to put that blame all on themselves and make up excuses for what others are doing to us, rather than on you know, putting the blame where it belongs. If you were with a friend, I can say that you don't want to be the one that steps in between and calls out somebody else's behaviors. You need to just let your friends know that you're there if they want to talk, but you would become enemy number one if you stepped in and said you shouldn't talk to her that way, or that you shouldn't treat her that way, because that isn't a decision for you to make, but rather letting that person know that if things aren't good, then you're there to listen to them.
Thank you very much. There are a couple of people, a couple of questions about therapy, and do you see a therapist that specializes in disability? And also, how do you find a therapist that understands the dynamics of disability and self-esteem?
So I've seen therapists that both that do specialize in medical individuals with medical needs and those who don't. The way that I found a therapist that did have experience with patients with disabilities was through my general practitioner. So I believe Children's Hospital in Boston, they had a list of practitioners as well. So I know that if you reach out to, or hopefully if you reach out to a doctor, they should have a list of resources. So I went to it was like the, I forget what the name of the practice was. It doesn't matter, but they were experienced in working with people with complex medical needs of all kinds. And now I had to switch away from that therapist. I had seen her for 4 years. We were really comfortable. The location just didn't work anymore. I now see someone who doesn't necessarily have those, that experience, but I have to say, I don't see a huge difference in our relationship and in the work that we're doing. I thought that I would, and I was really nervous about it. But it does depend on your preferences. And I always say that like finding a good therapist is almost like dating. You got to make sure that, you know, you feel comfortable with them and you have a good relationship going. So it is a process finding one that works with, or it can be a process finding one that works with you and your personality.
Yeah, and that process is the same for anybody. I always say give it 3 sessions, and if you're not clicking, go ahead and find the next person. I personally have had more luck with psychologist level trained folks than I have master's level trained folks, just because there tends to be more complex, nuanced training with that about the complexities of life circumstances in general, whatever those life circumstances are. But I've also met some great master's level clinicians. You can check out if there's a spina bifida clinic near you, or a hospital that has a physical rehabilitation department. They might have rehab psychologists on staff who are trained to work with people with chronic medical issues, including spina bifida. I also really love the website psychologytoday.com. You can look up by your zip code, you can look up by your insurance, and you can look up by any like needs that you have, including disabilities or medical conditions. So that can be a great resource as well.
Yeah, and I just added in the Q&A, and then another place is the American Psychological Association also has a locator service, and they're also pretty good. And also a little plug for a awesome webinar that SBA had a couple years ago. If you go to our website, spinabifidassociation.org, it's called Take Care of Your Mental Health. It's also on SBA's YouTube channel, Take Care of Your Mental Health. It's got awesome information on finding therapists. And then there was one more comment, which is I have no mobility issues, and only the invisible stuff, such as the bowel and bladder issues. I just wanted to bring up the fact that not all of us have a visible disability, and that there are different things that come along with that.
I can partly relate to that. My disability is visible in some ways, but it is also somewhat invisible in a way where I don't always use a mobility aid other than my leg braces, and I tend to wear clothes that cover my leg braces. So really only if I'm walking, that's when you can tell that there's something going on. I walk with a limp, because of my leg braces. It's very rare that I use anything else. I might use a wheelchair in some situations, but typically everyday life, I'm not. So I do understand that it's a very complex thing having an invisible disability. There's a lot that goes into your self-esteem. There's a lot that goes into how people perceive you and worrying about how people perceive you. And then also having those, the invisible stuff with the bladder and bowel, those are huge, huge determinants of like your self-worth, your self-confidence. It is really hard. And so I do understand that. And I think a lot of us do. So we're in a similar boat. I don't know what my advice is. I just wanted to say I understand.
Well, and when you could pass as normal, whatever normal is, there's a lot of pressure to do so at the cost of discounting that part of yourself. And so that's a societal thing that's worth wrestling with and grappling with and coming to terms with. And finding your comfort in whatever that comfort looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's easier to kind of, or not easy, it's harder to kind of figure out where you fit in. Am I disabled enough to fit into this group? Am I, normal? I hate using that too, Elizabeth, but enough to fit in with this group. It's really hard. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And well, it's we're a little bit past our time, but we do have a couple more questions. And so I don't know if you can respond to this. It's a huge topic. It could be the topic of a whole other webinar, but maybe we can address it super fast, and then we'll just wrap up just for the interest of time. But we'll be having more conversations about all these topics in the future. But this is the question. I have had a difficult time finding close and true friends throughout my life due to spina bifida. Have you any thoughts to meet and keep friendships?
Can I go first? Samantha? My first instinct is to say, is it really due to spina bifida, or is there other stuff going on? Spina bifida can definitely be a barrier and make things more challenging in relationships. But if your friends are really choosing to not be your friends because of your disability, I just go, and are those friends then worth having?
Samantha, were you going to say something?
Though that was pretty much the equivalent of what I was going to say.
Same thought. Very cool. All right, well, thank you, everybody. You've been, Elizabeth, Amy, Leslie, Samantha, you were all terrific. We could just have like a whole other hour of this. Thank you so much. This is where you can find the recording, but if you register, then you'll get the I'll send you the recording in an email in a day or so. And you know, if you have any questions, please, you know how to get in touch with us, I think. And you know, we will. And yeah, if you have any other questions for the presenters, we can do that by email later on as well. So thanks again so much, everybody. We really, really appreciate it. And also just wanted to say that Leslie is going to be doing another webinar for us. We don't have a date yet, soon. And Leslie, you were going to say, do you mind just telling us super fast what it was, the topic?
We're going to talk more about domestic and sexual violence and how to recognize and prevent and deal with, well, really any type of violence that can happen. I specialize in anti-violence against people with disabilities, so that's my topic area, and we'll be talking about it at whatever, you know, we can talk about some safety planning and some really things to help everybody stay safe.
Great. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your evening or afternoon.